first speaker is Joseph Vaughn-Perling. So here we go. All right.
Thank you, June. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for inviting me and having me talk. If you didn't hear him, my name is Joseph Vaughn-Perling. It's been written on the screen for the last, 5, 10, 20 minutes. There's an email address for me. There's a Twitter account if you're interested in my 140-character musings. And let's get started. I'm going to talk a little bit about money. So first off, I want to get a level set here in the audience. I can see people out there under the lights. Raise your hand if you're really interested in money. Okay, good. So I have a little bit of interest here already. Raise your hand if you've done transactions in more than one currency in the last month. Okay, so a few less. Raise your hand if you've done in more than 5 currencies in the last month. Oh, a couple. Good. Okay, so we have some people that are really... Now, if you're interested in like foreign exchange and all the more esoteric stuff and currency swapping and all that, this is probably going to be, stuff you already know, some of it. Some of it might be new to even you. Anyway, I'm going to get going. Okay, so what is money, right? What is money? Why do we need money? If you know why we need money, you're pretty good. I mean, everyone kind of needs it for something. Here's some pictures of some different types of money that have been money, different places and different times. Some of these look weird to you. Okay, so there's some wheat over there that was actually used for money. There's these big stones, right? There's a culture that uses stones, giant stones that are practically immovable by more than, we need a whole bunch of people to move them as money. And these are then assigned ownership within the tribe. When you own these stones, you own some wealth. And it's a very durable sort of money. I mean, there was even a story about one that sunk in a river, and everyone just kind of remembers that's where it is, and remembers who's it's owned by. So I mean, they all and they trade it back and forth. Like, I want to buy a house. Well, you own my stone that's in the river now, and we can't get it out. So I mean, money's a technology. It's evolved over time. I mean, it's not a natural thing. It's something we've created. Right, it's an abstraction. It's a tool that we use. It's something that that we fabricated in order to do this stuff for exchange, and it's fairly efficient for that. And it's kind of a standard. It's something. It's a measurement. It's a way of like evaluating something. You can say this is worth X dollars or yen or renminbi or whatever else. And as a technology, sometimes they fail. Right, and there've been a lot of failures over the years. I mean, I personally don't own any of those big stones, right? And I really don't want to. So for me, that would be a failure of the technology of money that's used by that tribe. Other failures through the years, right? So these are the world reserve currencies over the centuries, right? So down at the bottom here, we have the United States, and that's kind of up to the present day. But it wasn't always, right? And not, in the lifetime of people that are still alive today, it wasn't, right? So in 1925, after the, before the real, financial crisis and all that, it was the UK, and before that, France, the Netherlands, Spain, Portugal. Going back, if you want to go back further, that was in the Roman times. They were the currency of the day. There was a soldat, which was another currency that was used, mostly gold and silver coins. And this is, very current. This was first put up in March of this year, and this is the Chinese government is now advertising their currency, the renminbi, as the new world currency. And so they're kind of putting a push, to say, we're it now. It's no longer the dollar, and they're advertising this. This was in Bangkok. And they put these in all other countries also, but this was right near the Bangkok airport. It's one of the busiest airports on the planet. And interestingly, the Chinese government owns 75% of the Bank of China that creates the currency. So they're advertising their currency. I mean, that's kind of a new thing. You don't think of it, no one really advertises the dollar. You should use dollars, or, that's not usually done, right? They're doing it. Right, so it's kind of a thing in flux. We don't know how long it'll be the dollar. It may be a long time yet. It may not. We don't know. It's not really up to us to decide, except that it is. Everyone every day decides what they want to use to do trade. So a little bit about what money is. Historically, the concept of money is, this is the big triangle everyone's heard of, probably the mental concept of money. It's a medium of exchange, it's a unit of account, right? It's a store of value. And these are the three basic things that money has to do in order for it to be money. And what do they mean? Okay, so medium of exchange, that's something that you use to trade, right? So it's something that you can use to exchange, medium of exchange. Unit of account, it has to have some numerical value. It has to be able to be measurable, right? And it has to be a store of value. So if you have it over a long period of time, it has to still be valuable. In many currencies today, this doesn't work. They have inflation rates 20, 30, 40%. They can't save for, say, for example, a long-term thing like a child's education in their currency. They can't do it. They'd have to, buy a car and have the car sit in the garage and then sell the car later, or something valuable that they could then trade, because if they just hold the currency in a bank account, it won't be worth anything by the time they need it. So not all currencies are good at all of these things, right? I want to do another question out to the audience. How many of you have used Bitcoin in your life? I'm going to talk a little bit about it. How many of you have some Bitcoin? Yeah. Okay. So there's some fans. All right. Money is today, this is a concept that was brought up by a fellow by the name of Narayana, I'm going to mess his name up, Kochulakota. And he was the Federal Reserve Bank. He was working at the Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis. He's now the chair of that bank. And he published a very important paper in economics, and I'm not a big fan of economists in general. But he published a paper saying money is memory, and it's really kind of true, because what we have is all of these ledger systems that record who has what money, and that's how you know what money you have, and the cash is sort of a token for those ledger systems. You can take it to a bank and you can exchange it for a certain value that goes in your bank, and most of your transactions these days are probably using cards or some other type of thing that just transfer the money from one bank to another, and it's all in these ledger systems that are held in these institutions. This is increasingly common. And it's also an idea that central banks, like the federal bank, wants to advocate, right? They want to push this idea of all money is just ledger entries, and we're just recording it, and we're the guys that record it, so we decide really, what the ledger says. Okay, and a little bit, quickly from that paper, some of the ideas, the basic thesis of it is that money doesn't really do anything. It doesn't reduce any costs of transfer. It doesn't really help anybody. And so there's really no technical reason why money should be better for exchange than anything else other than its effectiveness. Okay? And a bunch of other central banks also agree, right? It's an intrinsically useless object. It's defined as a useless object. It's something that doesn't really have any value in itself. It's a piece of paper. The printed money has got a serial number on it, so it is equivalent to a ledger because it's got a different number on every different piece of it. But it's a technology, right? And there is this ongoing war on cash. The banks don't want there to be cash. And I don't know if you're aware of this war. It's kind of a quiet war. It's been going on for many, many years. There's certain amounts you aren't allowed to transact in cash over certain amounts in different countries. And the amount keeps going down, and inflation keeps pushing the value of it in the other direction. So the value of what you can exchange in cash has been decreasing over all of our lifetimes, and it's much less now than it used to be. Let's see, we'll let that sink in for a little bit. Okay, so this is happening. This is something that we're all experiencing. I mean, if you live in France, it's just gotten worse in the last month. They just reduced the amount that you can transact in cash from your bank down to about 1,000 euros per month. I mean, it was like, per 1,000 euro transaction, you can't, anything more than that you can't do. And then per month, they have a limit of, it's like 5,000 euros that you can't transact from your bank. And more than that, you're not allowed without being reported and going on a list. So, yeah, in cash. So, just like a week and a half ago, the Citibank chair issued an opinion paper. I mean, it's not binding or anything, but essentially saying that because we can't lower interest rates anymore, really what we should do is we should say that we don't value cash as much. So if you deposit cash into the bank, you deposit $100, you don't get $100 worth of credit. You only get $99 worth of credit in the bank for depositing $100 bill. So this is an opinion paper. He's advocating it. He's saying this is what we should do instead of like trying to lower the interest rate anymore because it's already at zero. We can't do it. So this idea is out there. I mean, they're really all of the banks, all of the central banks are pushing against there being cash in society. Some of the banks in Europe, you have to pay to deposit money, right? Just to deposit money because the interest rate's negative. So this is kind of a weird thing. We haven't really had this before. It's kind of upside down. So this whole idea of what money is going through some radical changes, right? So enter into this scene, this whole other realm, the Bitcoin thing, right? And what is Bitcoin? Okay, it's another ledger system. There's no intrinsic value to it. It doesn't have anything that it's made of. It's just another ledger system. But it's a really good one, and it's good in a lot of ways. Okay, it's also not good in a lot of ways, and I don't want to try to advocate it and tell you this is what you should all be doing because it's still in beta. I mean, really, it's a beta software. It's been in development since, less than 10 years, right? It's really only been widely used or even heard of in the last couple years. If you've known about Bitcoin for more than 2 years, I want to see anyone here in this room, more than 2 years? Good. If you've known about it for more than 4 years, any early adopter people, right? More than 5 years? Okay, so there's a few. There's some people here who are really into this. I like that. This is a rare audience, and I feel really privileged being up here and being the guy to tell you about this. I was one of those people who got to raise my hand through all of that. It's a really fundamentally different and new thing. Some of the essential principles about it, it's open source. It's in the same way that academia uses peer review. The software is all open. You can see what the software does. You can see exactly how it works. And one of the other essential principles of things that arose that allowed Bitcoin to thrive is the idea of the digital assets. Okay, and the problem of digital assets is that they can be copied very easily. The information wants to be free, right? You've heard that said maybe? Well, what Bitcoin does is it flips it on its head. It makes it so you can't copy it. You can't copy a Bitcoin. You can copy a wallet, but the ownership is still in the same ownership. You can't create a new one, or the software doesn't allow it at all. So it does what's called a sort of digital scarcity that no one had been able to do before. It's a new thing. It's a new technology. It's a new kind of way of using math and software to do something that had never been done before. And so in that way, it's very revolutionary. This same technology applies to many other technologies and many other ways it can be used. And you're probably hearing about all these other blockchain type companies. Anything that can be software can be made scarce in this same way. So you can do digital rights management, you can do contracting, you can do all these other kinds of wonderful things. But the first basic use of it was to try to use it as money. And that's still in its early days. So if you weren't one of those people that raised your hand, don't feel bad. It's still early days. It's still in beta. If you tried to start with it now and didn't know anything before you heard me talk, you're still an early adopter, right? Early adopter for technology is the first 2.5% of people. We're not even up to 1% yet. So, yeah, if you're just hearing about it today and you want to get into it, you're still what's called an early adopter because we're just in the very beginnings of it. I want to talk about some of the problems, because I want to just say, this is great, you should all start using Bitcoin. Some of the problems of it are that the way that it works, it creates this transaction, this set of data, this ledger, which grows over time in this blockchain. And blockchain is basically the ledger of all transactions that ever happened throughout the history of Bitcoin. It's all open. You can see every transaction that's ever happened. And that's how you validate that a transaction has happened, that you actually have received the value that's been transacted to you, or that you've actually sent the value that you've spent. And so can everyone else see that. So it's very transparent, very open. There's good and bad to that. And that you can contemplate what the implications of those might be for things like regulation and compliance and the rest of it. It sort of lends itself to that in a way. I always tell people, if you're going to use Bitcoin, don't do anything illegal with it. Don't ever do anything illegal with Bitcoin, because it creates a permanent record of every transaction forever that's open that everyone can see. Why would you use it to break the law? Use something else. Do anything else. It's built around this sense of honesty and forever. You might have, back when you were a kid, like your teacher wagged your finger at you and said, this is going to go on your permanent record. You knew it wasn't true. Right? This is true. It's permanent. It's forever. All right. So the size of these transactions grow with every transaction that's done. But just to give you some sense of scale here, where Bitcoin is way down in the bottom of like all these other types of things that are being used for transactions, right? So, I mean, something like Visa, you're many, many orders of magnitude greater in numbers of transactions, in volume of transactions, total transaction. So their record keeping has to be, scaled up, right? But it's a centralized organization, and it's not done in a decentralized way, so there's some cost savings that they get that Bitcoin doesn't have, that the software is now developing new ways in order to accommodate it. So many of the problems that are arising for it to grow and to climb this list are being done by the software development in this open source community. If you're a programmer, definitely something, if you get involved in, you'll probably do very well in your life. To give you a little bit more idea of scale, if you looked at that previous chart, you see where Bitcoin was, and MasterCard and Visa. Foreign exchange swamps it by many, many other orders of magnitude. So as big as it could possibly be, even if it were going up against something like Visa, it's still a drop in the bucket to the value that is exchanged in the international currency markets. But that's its goal. That's like the vision of what this could be if it were to be a reserve currency, right? Back to the beginning of the talk. So early days, yes, very, very early days. It's not even approaching what people that are working on it are hoping its potential might someday be. Okay, any questions? Got a couple minutes left. Let's see, here's one over here. The Silk Road, if you don't know what that is, there was this online marketplace in the dark net, right? Where you could do transactions. It was mostly done, almost all completely done with Bitcoin. You could send Bitcoin to somebody and they'd send you something in the mail, and it could be something that's illegal in your jurisdiction. The site was shut down, okay? It was shut down, October, long time ago. Anyway, a year ago. There are new versions up. There's many other dark marketplaces. The original Silk Road was shut down. The person that they alleged to be running it is now in jail. And in fact, some of the law enforcement people that were working on the case were also caught because they embezzled some of the money from the Silk Road site. I mean, it's a very transparent system, right? So if you're using it for illegal stuff, I got to warn you. The cops, the FBI guys, whatever, they were working on the case. They stole some money that was being used in the case. They were created accounts to try to trap the guys that are doing it, and they kept some of the money, some of the Bitcoin, they kept it. And of course they got caught. So, another question. Yeah, right. So, blockchains fork all the time, right? The way it works is there's this, two questions there. Okay, so first Mt. Gox, right? Companies fail. Mt. Gox, MTGOX, it was one of the biggest exchanges. It wasn't the first one, but it was one of the biggest. And MTGOX, if you remember its history, the guy that was running it basically bought some software that was used for the Magic the Gathering online exchange, right? So he was a trading card software, and they tried to use it for doing the exchanges for this currency that's trying to be the world reserve currency. Okay, the software didn't really lend itself to that, but he kind of made it kludge together and kind of made it work, and then kind of started taking some of the money for himself, and of course he got caught. And also, because a lot of the people that were doing this were also doing things that were nefarious, right? There's some things that weren't allowed in the jurisdictions that they were operating. So all the law enforcement went after him too, and that was all causing all sorts of other costs. Who knows what really happened? But it's a simple accounting exercise, forensic accounting. You can go through and see all the transactions because all the Bitcoin transactions are still there in the blockchain. So it's you can see what happened. And as it turns out, it looks like he was embezzling a lot of money, as it turns out. The other question was about the blockchain forking. Blockchains fork. Okay, so what the blockchain is, real simply, the way a blockchain works is a bunch of computers all over the world are trying to solve this mathematical problem. The ones that do all the work of it have the best chance of being the one to solve the problem first. And the problem is basically to do some math that happens to have a bunch of zeros up at the front, and the one that has the one that does that first wins the block, creates the block, wins the block reward. They get some Bitcoin, and that then that block then gets broadcast to everybody else. Now, if someone else also solves the problem at about the same time, there could be two blocks there that are in contention, and you don't know which one it's going to be until they've been broadcast, and usually until another block has been created after it. And the way it's called a chain is because some of the information of the previous block is encoded into the next block, and the next one, and the next one. So the deeper into the chain the transaction is, the harder it is to undo. So this is why people wait for a confirmation or two, often, before they consider the transaction to be valid. And, oh, this is a big problem. You have to wait 10 minutes for a confirmation to be considered valid. Anyone have an idea of how long it takes with Visa? Days? I'm hearing days? No. How long can you reverse your transaction by calling Visa and say, hey, I didn't make that transaction? Yeah, okay. So, I mean, if I'm, say, doing some business where I'm sending something valuable in the mail and someone gives me your credit card number, I'm taking the risk. I'm taking the risk that they're not going to yank that money back by calling Visa, MasterCard and having the money taken back into their account. And then I have to dispute it, and they're going to dispute it. And I'm going to end up being out the stuff, plus also having to try to dispute it and maybe get the chance of getting it back. This doesn't happen with Bitcoin. You get 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you're ordering something online, okay, fine. I can wait 10 minutes, right? I don't have to run off to the mailbox as soon as the transaction hits. So it has a lot of advantages, and it's really kind of a technology that's built for the internet. Credit cards, they were designed long before the internet was even contemplated. This is a technology, this is essentially money for the internet age. And you can obviously use it in person-to-person transactions, and person-to-person is fine for that. But it's really built for the trustless long-distance transaction over the internet using software. And there really isn't anything better for it for that purpose. I have some other questions I just want to hear. So I'm not going to go so far as to instruct you how to do something illegal. But say, for example, someone wanted more privacy. Say I'm a multinational company, and I want to do business in another country, and the banks there are owned by my competition, and I don't want them to know what I'm doing, right? So I want to send money to my branch in Kuala Lumpur, and I want to do it quickly, and I want to do it non-reversibly, and I want it to be something that they can exchange there. I want to use something like a blockchain technology that isn't Bitcoin, because then my competition would know that I'm sending my money over there, right? Because it's in the blockchain. They can see if they're doing blockchain analysis, they can see where I'm doing business. They can see, oh, I'm trying to scale up my business in their country. They need to fight back. They need to create some problems for me. I don't want that to happen. I want to avoid the competition. I want to do something more private. Okay. There are other blockchain technology currencies that use these privacy features. I could name several. One of the ones is a really good example using what's called the crypto note technology called Monero. XMR is its trading name. And it uses a very similar technology to Bitcoin. However, for every transaction that's sent, it uses what's called a ring signature. So not just am I signing the transaction I'm sending, but a whole bunch of other people are also signing that transaction, unbeknownst to me. And no one knows who it came from. No one knows who it went to. The addresses are never reused, so it can never be really tracked in the same way that Bitcoin can, because Bitcoin, every transaction uses the key that is your public key, and everyone can see it. These are never reused, so it doesn't link to a previous transaction, and you don't know who sent it or who received it if you're an onlooker on the other side. Now, one thing about this Monero is that it also supports the transparency thing. So if you're this multinational corporation and you want your auditors to be able to see what everything you've done, and so you can do your auditing report, you can do that. You can show them your key, your view key, and they can see every transaction that's ever been done for you, or some set of them that you want them to see. So it provides you all of the features of the auditability, the transparency, the reliability, but also the privacy. And that's something that Bitcoin doesn't do without a bunch of little add-on difficult tricks. And don't really work anyway. They're newer, so if you thought, oh no, I'm not an early enough adopter, I mean, there's new ones that are rising in popularity that if you wanted to jump into, you could, right? I don't know about your friend. I wish him luck. Like I said, everything's illegal somewhere, so try not to be standing in a place where it is. Any more questions? I know I'm over, so I'm going to try to keep it brief.
Quick question.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about what happens in the year 2040, right? 2040. Yeah. All Bitcoins get mined in 2040. The problem of that is, well, how do you pay the miners that are doing this work to mine it? Okay, who's paying for running all these computers to do all these transactions to try to calculate it? A little bit of Bitcoin gets shaved off of each transaction and is kind of tipped out to the miners. It's kind of like a tip, a couple of pennies.
What mining is?
Yeah, mining is running those computers. Okay, so running those computers that calculate the transactions. It's kind of like this big lottery. Everyone runs a computer, and if you win the lottery, you get the block reward. You get a couple Bitcoins. Right now it's 25. It'll get halved soon, another year. And it gets halved and halved and halved, those block rewards, to kind of ease people off of the block reward that you get from new Bitcoins being distributed. These are essentially Bitcoins being inflated by this block reward. Well, the block reward also includes the transaction fees, which you will continue to get even past 2140. Okay, one last question really quick. Right, there's no consumer protection, there's no protection racket. So you pay for that service for Visa, MasterCard. There are Visa, MasterCards that you can get that use Bitcoin. So you can optionally use those and pay a fee to have some protection. So you can get that, but it's not built into the system. It's add-on. All right, thank you so much for your attention. It's been a great audience.